Hello there and welcome. I'm Dr. John Chuback and welcome back to Chuback Seminars, where I'm going to show you and teach you how to master your mind so that you can achieve ultimate success in any area of your life. Today I want to share with you a little bit about my background and myself and how I got here and why I was inspired to create Chuback Seminars. Today isn't scripted. This is off the top of my head. It's from my heart. It's from my mind. And it's for me to get to know you so that hopefully we can connect and I can help you personally achieve all that it is that you wish out of life. I had a very fortunate start in life. I was born right here in New Jersey, not far from where I'm sitting now. I'm sitting in my surgical office here in Paramus, New Jersey, and I grew up just one town away in Fairlawn. So I'm right here in northern New Jersey, about 15 minutes from the George Washington Bridge, and I had a wonderful childhood with a great mother and father. My father was a doctor, my mother was a nurse, and I was encouraged from a young age to get a great education and encouraged very much by my dad to become a doctor and a surgeon, and specifically a cardiac surgeon. And I'm going to tell you why that's important in our story, in my story, and maybe something you can relate to as well. When my father was training back in Philadelphia, back in the 1960s as an OBGYN, at that time, cardiac surgery was in its infancy. There was a very famous man, famous surgeon by the name of Charles Bailey. And Dr. Bailey was one of the innovators in open heart surgery and helped to develop some of the early techniques. One of the things that he was interested in was valvular disease for people who had had rheumatic fever and had stenosis or tightening of the mitral valve. And he created a technique called finger fracture technique, where he actually put his finger inside of the human heart and opened up that valve with his finger to save a lot of people's lives. This was the very, very early days of cardiac surgery. And my father was there in Philadelphia training at Hahnemann University Hospital, where Dr. Bailey was on staff. And it was a very, very exciting time. So when I was born some years later, from my childhood, I started making rounds with my dad on Saturday and Sunday to see patients after he had delivered their babies earlier in the week, and we'd go by the nursery and see the babies, and we'd visit the moms, and it was quite a special experience for a little boy to have. But my father was not encouraging me to become an obstetrician like himself. He was encouraging me to become an open heart surgeon because he really saw that as the pinnacle of surgical and medical practice at the time, which it was. It was a very, very exciting time. And so as I grew and as I got older into my adolescent years and then my teenage years, those conversations with my father became more and more in-depth, more and more serious, and more focused about actually going off to college and then medical school and then training to become an open heart surgeon. And I did that. It was a long road. It was a difficult road, but I was a good student and learned to become very, very disciplined and focused. And I spent many years in the library and in the classroom and in the hospital. And I went through 4 years of university and then 4 years of medical school right here in New Jersey, in Newark at New Jersey Medical School, and went on to do my general surgical training here in New Jersey, which was 5 years of training. That was after 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school. And after those 5 years of general surgical training, I went on to the University of Rochester, Strong Memorial Hospital, University of Rochester Medical Center, to train with some incredible people who, many of whom became lifelong mentors of mine in cardiac surgery and cardiovascular thoracic surgery, where I learned an amazing, amazing set of skills to be able to do bypass surgery on the heart, valve replacements, heart transplants, mechanical assist devices, artificial hearts, operations on babies' hearts, what we call congenital heart surgery, pediatric heart surgery, and just had really an amazing, amazing experience. So my personal journey has been quite remarkable, but like so many good stories that you hear, nothing is perfect. Nothing is all roses. And when I got out of my surgical training and started practicing cardiac surgery here in New Jersey, there was a major bump in the road. There was a hitch. Although I was well trained and I became board certified in general surgery and cardiovascular and thoracic surgery and had a great track record in open heart surgery, things had changed. Things had changed dramatically in that period of time. And we weren't anticipating that. I wasn't anticipating it. My father wasn't anticipating it. Many of our professors and my mentors along the way weren't anticipating it. And what had changed really was the field of cardiac surgery, because technology had changed. And something had come along called interventional cardiology. Now, interventional cardiology was done by a different group of doctors. It was done by cardiologists. Now, cardiologists have a different line of training. They don't go from medical school to general surgery to cardiovascular surgery. They go from medical school to internal medicine training to cardiology training to interventional cardiology fellowship. So it's two different groups of doctors with two different skill sets. And one was a very invasive group of surgeons and doctors like myself who had to open up the chest in the midline, put the patient on the heart-lung machine, stop the heart, all of those kinds of very dramatic, invasive procedures, whereas the interventional cardiologists had developed minimally invasive procedures where you put a little catheter up through the groin or even through the arm, and you could open up blocked arteries in the heart, what we call angioplasty and stenting, or what you hear about as ballooning and stenting the blocked arteries in the heart. And that technology had arisen and was developed during all of those years that I was training. And so by the time that I got out to become a cardiac surgeon, which was supposed to be a very, very lucrative field and a very busy field with lots and lots of surgery to do and a great career to be had. Unfortunately, for many of us in cardiac surgery, the field had become greatly diminished and greatly shrunken because interventional cardiologists were doing, by the time I came out, about 1 million angioplasties and stents per year. And so the number of cardiac surgeries went down dramatically. The reimbursement also went down dramatically in that period of time because lots and lots of heart surgeons had been trained from the time I was a little boy dreaming about becoming a heart surgeon until the time that I was a grown man in my mid-30s as a heart surgeon, having just finished my training. That's how long it took. Again, 15 years after high school. So imagine finishing the 12th grade and then starting over, doing 12 grades again, and then 3 more on top of that. So it was a long road to become an open heart surgeon. Although I was quite successful for 5 or 6 years here in New Jersey practicing open heart surgery, I knew that the future wasn't so bright in terms of volume, making a living, not to mention that it was a very, very difficult, time-consuming, all-encompassing lifestyle that really kept me away from my family and being at home. And that was another thing that bothered me about the profession. So this is where everything starts to get shaken up in my life, having had a very kind of difficult but smooth run right through all of that training. Now there was this major stumbling block. What to do next? Should I just stick with cardiac surgery and deal with the fact that the volume is way down, the reimbursement is way down, the lifestyle is very difficult, time consuming 7 days a week, on call 24 hours a day? Or should I make a change? And that's where the next chapter of my life, going back about 25 years, starts, with me looking for a new pivot, if you will, a new direction to go with my personal journey in my life where I could find happiness, satisfaction, success, using the skills that I had worked so hard to achieve. So at that time, I went on a personal search. This was kind of in the early days of the internet, so it's not nearly what it is today in terms of the information that you can get through videos like this, YouTube channels, searching ChatGPT, Google searches, etc. In those days, I'm talking around the year 2002 or so, when I first came out of my cardiac surgical training, you had to go to the library or the bookstore And I did. I went to the local Barnes & Noble, quite frankly, in Clifton, New Jersey. And I would go to the self-help areas and to the business areas and to the entrepreneurship areas and all of those places looking for books to read and to study. Because let's face it, that was my strength. Having been a student my entire life and studied really, really hard and done a lot of reading and having had a lot of success through academic pursuit and through studying and reading, I figured that would be my best way out of this predicament that I was in how to make the best career for myself professionally and how to find happiness and satisfaction in my professional and personal life. So I did come across some things, and we'll talk about those books that I read. But in that period of time, I also had a very good friend who's about 20 years older than I am. And he was a business person. He was a personal finance consultant who had worked with my mother and father, and I knew him over the years, and we had become friendly. He had become one of my mentors, and we'll talk in this program about mentorship, how important that is, how many mentors I've had in my life, and the value that I see in mentors, and how I feel that you should have mentors in your life. And we're going to encourage that. We're going to foster that and nurture that in this program, in this series of seminars. This one particular gentleman, we're going to call him Len. That is his name. I won't give his last name because I don't have permission to do so right now, but maybe in the future we will. But Len, who was a finance advisor, was a fascinating person, and we had a lot in common, although we were about 20 years apart. And he was almost like a big brother to me. We had both played high school football, and we were interested in similar things like fashion and clothing, men's clothing, and things like that. And so we really hit it off. And Len had kind of followed me along my path from college to medical school, general surgical training and cardiac surgical training, and into my early years of practice. And he was, really quite proud of me and was always encouraging me along the way. And suffice it to say that Len was very upset when he found out that I was unhappy as a young cardiac surgeon practicing with an excellent track record, excellent results. I had a great job in a great hospital in a major metropolitan area just outside of New York City. So, from the outside, everything looked fantastic, but he knew that internally there were significant problems with the profession, the reimbursement, the volume, income, and the lifestyle. Obviously, Len wanted to help me out. And what he did is he said, "John, could I send you a set of cassette tapes?" These cassette tapes really helped me at a point in my life when I was going through some struggles and personal issues. And I think that they would be valuable for you. And I said, listen, anything that would help would be great. And so this gives you an idea of how long ago this is, going back 23 years or so, that we still had a cassette player in the car. And so Len sent me these cassette tapes. There weren't even CDs at that time. There were CDs, of course, but his tapes were old, so he had the cassette player, and I still had a cassette player in my car. So he sent up this box of cassettes. I remember there were 6 cassettes in a plastic case, and they were from the great late Denis Waitley. And we'll talk a lot about Denis in my course, Chuback Seminars. In fact, just the other day, I was on the telephone with his wonderful and incredible daughter, Deborah Waitley, who's an amazing, amazing teacher and consultant in personal development herself. And I'm sure we'll talk more about Deborah in the future, and hopefully we'll have her on some of my programs. Getting back to the cassettes that I received from Len on Denis Waitley, this was his incredible all-time phenomenal course, The Psychology of Winning, POW. And I studied those tapes like a scientist. I played them over and over and over again in the car on the way back and forth to the office, on the way back and forth to the hospital, in the middle of the night on the way to an emergency. And this was really my first major exposure to personal development material and positive psychology material. Interestingly, in medical school, of course, we had a psychiatry rotation, which was a major rotation of about 3 or 4 months, as I recall. It was inpatient and outpatient. But there we focused on pathology of the mind, problems like neuroses and psychoses and things like that, and how to help people with those problems. But this was totally different. This was a different look at the mind. This was positive psychology, looking at the potential of the incredible, miraculous, amazing human mind. And in fact, my wife, who has a degree in psychobiology and a PhD in neurochemistry, hopefully you're going to be seeing her on these programs as well and at Chuback seminars, teaching some of the amazing, amazing things that she knows about the human mind and the psychobiology and neurochemistry of the human mind and its incredible potential. And we're also going to talk about the difference between the brain and the mind. All of those lectures and all of those subjects will be coming up to you in the next months and years. Fascinating stuff, to be sure. Now, Denis Waitley's program really got me excited as a great student, somebody who had a voracious appetite for reading, studying, etc., really got me going into the field of personal development, human potential, personal growth, and to what the late, great Sir John Eccles, winner of a Nobel Prize for his work on the synapse of the brain, what he called climbing the ladder of human personhood. And we're going to talk about that in these seminars, the difference between being a human being and being a human person. There is a big difference. It may seem subtle, but it's not. It's enormous. And we're going to talk about that. Well, once I got going down that road of personal development and human potential, I was hooked. Right out of the gate, I was hooked, hook, line, and sinker, no turning back, down the rabbit hole. I was going to read, watch, listen to, study everything I could possibly get my hands on. I was voracious. I was insatiable. And that process and journey that started 23 years ago continues to this day. And as you can see, Dr. Chuback, John Chuback, is a very serious student. All of these notebooks are filled with ideas, concepts, teachings, learnings, philosophies that I've collected all of those years and that I intend to share with you personally so that you personally can be your very best and achieve all that you were put on this planet and given this precious life to achieve. Now, in that course of study, one of the things that I came across was an amazing book that really helped to unlock the rest of my life. That book was called Who Moved My Cheese? And it was written by Spencer Johnson. Spencer Johnson was also an MD. He was a medical doctor. And he writes a book. It's about mice who live in a maze, and they come upon a big problem. The problem is they've been living in a corner of the maze where the cheese has been abundant, where life is good, where there are really no worries. They start to notice that the amount of cheese in their little corner of the maze seems to be dwindling, seems to be not so abundant as it once was. Little by little, they notice that, hey, we're not getting as much cheese in this corner of the maze as we used to. Until one day, it becomes apparent that this is becoming a real problem, like the kind of problem where we might go hungry if we stay in this corner of the maze. And the question becomes what to do. I don't want to kill the whole book for you, and I do want you to read it if you haven't read it. And if you haven't read it for a long time, I'd like you to read it again. Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. But in a nutshell, they have two choices. Stay in that corner of the maze and hope and pray and wish, cross your fingers, that somehow the cheese will come back. Just as it began to disappear, it will begin to reappear. That some outside force will act upon the corner of the maze that they're sitting in, that's been so good for so long, and the cheese will get plentiful and become plentiful once again. Or they can make another choice, which is to go out and explore other areas of the maze that they're not familiar with, other areas of the maze that they've never seen, other areas of the maze that they don't even know may or may not exist. It's an amazing book and it's an amazing moment. And some mice stay behind and some mice go out into the maze. And that book changed my life. As a cardiac surgeon, sitting in my corner of the maze, which was at one time very, very robust, and a corner of the maze which was filled with abundance and plenitude and satisfaction and gratification in many ways, not just financially, but in terms of being able to serve the community, take care of patients, make sick people well. It was an amazing area of the maze. But it wasn't that same way by the time I got there. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't in its heyday. It wasn't at its peak. It wasn't at the height of its greatness and glory in terms of helping patients and serving the community and being rewarded for it. We'll talk a lot about that in Chuback seminars. The idea of reward for service to others, a key concept. So that book, Who Moved My Cheese, Dr. Spencer Johnson, which is a great book because any of us can read it, no matter what situation you're in. It applies to everybody. It wasn't written for cardiac surgeons, and my course is not for surgeons or doctors or anybody else. It's for everyone, and it's for you personally. That little book helped me get the courage to say, hey, well, if I got here, if I got this far, if I became an open heart surgeon, if I became board certified in 2 different surgical specialties, general surgery and cardiac surgery, if I've got a great surgical track record, I can do anything. I can change. I can change directions. I can turn my life around. I can go a new way. I can explore other avenues. I don't know what's going to be out there, but I have confidence in myself to go and take a look and take that journey. And that's exactly what I did. And through that process of many years of study, personal development, personal growth, and personal change, things got better and better and better over the years. And I became more and more involved with the material, this personal development, personal growth material. Some people call it self-help. I like to call it positive psychology. That process led me to many, many virtual mentors. And in that group was Denis Waitley, who I later had the incredible opportunity to meet and know personally and build a strong relationship, as I said, with his wonderful and brilliant daughter, Deborah Waitley. I also came to know about Brian Tracy, who I also had the wonderful, wonderful experience of meeting and knowing Brian personally and his wife, his wonderful wife, Barbara, and visiting Denis Waitley in his home in San Diego. And getting to know these people personally and talk with them and have them as my personal mentors in my life. It was an incredible experience. And then others who I never had the opportunity to meet personally, and I somewhat regret the next one, Mr. Bob Proctor. I did have the chance to attend some of his seminars, and I was just too busy at the time, and I didn't, make that move, and I regret that because sadly, like Denis Waitley, he's no longer with us. But Bob Proctor was an amazing, amazing influence on me. And much of the material that I teach comes from Bob. And I remember listening to Bob one time teaching that he had no problem taking great pride in the material that he taught because, as he put it, none of it was his own. These were things that he learned from other people and was passing on to a new generation of folks who were interested in personal development, personal growth, and living their best life. And that inspired me. That said, wow, that's great. You don't have to have something brand new in order to be a teacher, to be a guide, and to help the hero, you, to find your own success in your path. So Bob taught me so many things about the human mind and the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, from many of his teachers that came before him. And we're going to talk about many of them in upcoming programs. The other person who had a massive impact on me was Jim Rohn, the great late Jim Rohn. Of course, I didn't have the opportunity to meet Jim either. I believe that he may have even passed prior to my getting involved in the material. But fortunately, he left some great books behind and several wonderful audio programs and videos that I watched again and again and again. And these people had recommended some of the elder statesmen, the the founders of this personal material, if you will, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, and many others. And as a culmination of all of that, after many, many years of reading, studying, maturing, growing as a student of personal development and human personhood, I wrote my own book, Make Your Own Damn Cheese. Make Your Own Damn Cheese. I'm going to read to you, if you'd be so kind, you give me just a moment to share this with you personally. The preface to this book, it's short, but it's meaningful to me. It says, "It's out of profound respect that I dedicate this book to Jim Rohn, Bob Proctor, Brian Tracy, Denis Waitley, Price Pritchett, Earl Nightingale, and Napoleon Hill for the incredible contributions they've made to the field of personal development. Each of these men has demonstrated an extraordinary passion for teaching and sharing through their work. Their efforts to educate those who are serious about self-improvement have been extraordinary, both individually and collectively. They've helped enormously in bringing to the common person, quote unquote, an awareness of the immense potential of the human mind. The positive impact that they have had on millions of people, including myself, over the years and around the world is truly immeasurable. For anyone who's interested in becoming the best they can be, I strongly suggest you study the books, recordings, programs, and seminars offered by each of these great teachers. Doing so will be an investment in yourself, which will pay dividends for as long as you live. And I speak personally when I say I can make that endorsement and make that dedication to each of them and their work, because I've been a student and I have been a recipient of so many blessings and great achievements as a result of it. Then I have a special thanks, and I'm going to go down this with you as a student of personal development. You should know all of these names. Special thanks to James Allen, Andrew Carnegie, John Paul DeJoria, Walt Disney, Thomas Edison, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Chuck Feeney, Henry Ford, Viktor Frankl, Milton Friedman, Brian Greene, Sir Edmund Hillary, William James, Spencer Johnson, Deepak Malhotra, who wrote a book called I Moved Your Cheese, another fascinating book. Dick Portillo, Ayn Rand, David Schwartz, Thomas Sowell, W. Clement Stone, Henry David Thoreau, Sam Walton, Orville Wright, and his brother, Wilbur Wright. We're going to talk about all of these people in my seminars, and hopefully one day when I see you personally at a live seminar, we're going to get deeply into much of the information and much of the work that all of these great individuals had put forth. So much to learn, so much to know. And they're not teaching this stuff in school. I went through many, many years of school. I started at age 3. I finished at 33, my formal education, and I didn't know any of these names. Maybe a couple like Sam Walton, who started Walmart, the Wright brothers, who invented the airplane, Thomas Edison, but most I hadn't heard of. People like Ralph Waldo Emerson, maybe in high school, but very minimally, superficially. So many great, great teachers. And I'm going to help you to understand who they were and the messaging and the teaching and the philosophies that they left behind for all of us to live by and to utilize as a great skill set for achievement, abundance, happiness, freedom, prosperity. Amazing stuff. And then I'm going to also share with you from the early part of this book, Make Your Own Damn Cheese, a quote from Earl Nightingale in his great book, The Strangest Secret, or audio recording, The Strangest Secret from 1957. He said, "We live today in a golden age. This is an era that humankind has looked forward to, dreamed of, and worked toward for thousands of years. But since it's here, we pretty well take it for granted. We in America are particularly fortunate to live in the richest land that ever existed on the face of the earth. A land of abundant opportunity for everyone. Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, 1957. And we're going to talk about, in my seminars, what the strangest secret is, what the 6 most powerful words in the world are that can bring you abundance, freedom, happiness, achievement, service to others, and the reciprocal well-being that brings back to us. We're going to talk about the great law of laws, the law of cause and effect. I have so much to share with you. I have so much to teach you, and it's my great pleasure and my great privilege to finally take all of this work that I've spent half of my lifetime studying, honing, developing, digesting, absorbing, processing, so that I can personally now stand on the shoulders of giants like the ones that I've mentioned in today's opening. I was fortunate to have Price Pritchett write a testimonial on the back cover of this book. I'll share it with you. Price Pritchett, author of U Squared from Texas, unbelievable human being, unbelievable modern-day philosopher, educator. I feel so blessed to have this testimonial. In this charming fable, Dr. John Chuback coaches with simplicity and clarity. Clarity, one of the key words. Explaining how to master the mazes of life where so many people wander, drift, and underachieve. He's a gifted guide, revealing the awesome power and potential we each carry within that can deliver quantum leaps in performance. Price Pritchett, PhD, business development leader, and best-selling author of U Squared and The Quantum Leap Strategy. You shouldn't miss either of those books. And if you think this book is little and packed with incredible material, knowledge, philosophy, wait until you see Price's books. They're this thick, and you can't imagine that a book that's almost a pamphlet could carry so much power and value that could change your life. I know his books, U Squared and The Quantum Leap Strategy, recommended to me by Bob Proctor, can change your life too. And in the course of these seminars, we're also going to go through the Straight A Handbook. Now, don't be fooled. This is not just for students. This is the 50 most powerful secrets for ultimate success in and out of the classroom. And we're going to go through it. And your blueprint for success. Amazing vocabulary of success and personal development, personal achievement to help you climb the ladder of human personhood and live all of your personal dreams, desires, goals, wishes, and find freedom and happiness in what I call the parallel maze. And again, gifted and blessed to have a foreword written by Brian Tracy, my real-life mentor and friend, author of Eat That Frog. And if you haven't read that one, it's an absolute must. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today. And I'm going to thank you for taking the time to listen and stick with me right here until the end. There's going to be a lot more incredible information coming at you. And as I've said before, my real dream, my real goal, my real aspiration is to get to know you personally and meet you at one of my live seminars. And we're already in the planning phases for those. It's going to be in a beautiful location, a place where you can get away from the daily grind, from what we call the rat race, unwind, free your mind, open up your subconscious to a new way of thinking, a new philosophy, a better way of living, so that you can personally live your dreams, your best life, and so that I can encourage you where I put the courage into you, encourage and courage for me to gift you with the courage to do what I and so many other people have done with this incredibly powerful material, which is to make up your mind, make the decision, and then take the action to build an incredible life for you, your loved ones, your family, and find freedom, happiness, and success in this beautiful world using your magnificent human mind. Stick with me. I'll see you again very soon.